You've been lied to about success. It's not about working harder, smarter, or even luck. There are 7 habits, simple, almost invisible, that most people ignore. But when I tried them, my life shifted in just 7 days. And no, this isn't another think positive lecture. This is about rewiring how you see everything. Most of us chase success like it's a finish line. We grind, hustle, burn out, and still feel stuck. But what if the real problem isn't what we're doing, it's how we're thinking? I tested 7 habits rooted in timeless wisdom, the kind that's been quietly used by millionaires and legends for decades. And the crazy part, they cost nothing. No fancy tools, no 5 a.m. routines, just mental shifts. Here's what happened. Habit 1, the 2-second decision rule. Indecision is the silent killer of dreams. It's not failure that holds most people back, it's the hesitation, the overthinking, the endless weighing of options that never leads to action. Here's the truth. Small decisions shape your life more than big ones. Because if you can't decide what to eat for breakfast, how will you ever decide on the career move, the investment, the relationship that could change everything? So here's what I did. I made a rule. If a decision takes less than 2 seconds to make, I do it immediately. No second guessing, no mental debates, no waiting for the perfect moment. Hitting snooze, get up, scrolling mindlessly instead of working, close the app, thinking about sending that email, hit send. It sounds too simple to matter, but that's the point. Your brain is wired to resist action. It wants to stay comfortable, to avoid risk, to keep you safe in hesitation. But here's what happens when you start making those tiny decisions instantly. You train yourself to act, not just think. At first, it felt unnatural. My mind kept trying to pull me back into deliberation. What if I regret this? Maybe I should wait. But I refused to entertain those thoughts. And within days, something shifted. The mental fog lifted. Tasks that used to drag out got done in minutes. I wasn't working harder, I was just no longer stuck in my own head. The biggest change, I stopped negotiating with myself. No more I'll start after one more video. No more I'll do it tomorrow. If it took 2 seconds to decide, I acted. And that's when I realized the most successful people aren't necessarily smarter or more talented. They just don't let hesitation steal their momentum. Every time you pause, you give doubt room to grow. Every time you delay, you reinforce the habit of inaction. But when you start moving before your fear can talk you out of it, you rewrite the rule. You prove to yourself that action is always better than perfect planning. Because action creates clarity. Action builds confidence. And action, no matter how small, is the only thing that ever moves you forward. Try it for 1 week. The next time you face a decision whether to go to the gym, whether to make that call, whether to start that project, if the answer is obvious, act. Don't think. Don't hesitate. Just move. You'll be shocked at how much changes when you stop letting small choices become big obstacles. Habit 2, the mirror talk. Most people wake up and immediately reach for their phone. They start their day absorbing someone else's news, someone else's drama, someone else's priorities. And then they wonder why they feel scattered, why they react to everything instead of leading their own life. Here's what I learned. The first few minutes of your day set the tone for everything that follows. If you let the world dictate your thoughts before you've even had a chance to think for yourself, you're already playing defense. So I tried something different. Every morning, before checking my phone, before even leaving my bedroom, I stood in front of the mirror and said one sentence out loud. Today, I control nothing but myself. At first, it felt awkward. Talking to yourself in the mirror, it sounds like something out of a cheesy self-help movie. But I stuck with it. And within days, I noticed something powerful happening. That one sentence became a mental filter. It reminded me, before anything else could, that my power wasn't in controlling external events. It was in controlling my response to them. Traffic jam? Doesn't matter, I control my patience. Rude coworker? Doesn't matter, I control my reaction. Bad news? Doesn't matter, I control my next move. By starting the day with that reminder, I stopped feeling like a victim of circumstance. I stopped waiting for the world to be perfect before I could be at peace. This isn't about affirmations. It's not about convincing yourself of something you don't believe. It's about setting a standard for how you'll engage with the day before the day gets to you. Because here's the truth. Most of our stress doesn't come from what happens to us. It comes from how we interpret what happens. When you anchor yourself in the morning with the unshakable truth that you control your mind, your attitude, your effort, nothing can throw you off course. Try it for 1 week. Before you touch your phone, before you let the world in, stand in front of the mirror and claim your power. Say it out loud, mean it, and watch what happens when you stop reacting to life and start directing it. Habit 3. The empty chair method. Let me ask you something. How many hours have you wasted this month replaying arguments in your head? Conversations that already happened, or worse, ones that never even took place. That coworker who disrespected you, that friend who didn't text back, that thing you wish you'd said in the moment but didn't. Your mind chews on these thoughts like a dog with a bone, gnawing long after the meat is gone. And here's the painful truth. While you're stuck in these mental loops, the other person isn't thinking about you at all. They've moved on, but you're paying rent for space in your own head that should be free. I used to do this constantly. I'd lie in bed at night, constructing entire dialogues, defending myself against imaginary attacks, winning arguments against ghosts. And the next day, I'd be exhausted before I even started. Not from real problems, from the ones I invented. Then I discovered something so simple it almost felt stupid, but it worked. Not over months, not after expensive therapy sessions, in days. Here's how it works. When you catch yourself trapped in one of these mental battles, stop. Find a quiet space, your bedroom, your car, even a bathroom stall if you have to. Picture an empty chair. Now imagine the person you're struggling with sitting there. And here's the key. Say everything you're holding back out loud. No filter, no polite restraint. If you're angry, scream. If you're hurt, say it. If you feel betrayed, name it. Get it all out. Not in your head, where thoughts fester, but into the open air where they can dissolve. The first time I tried this, I felt ridiculous. Talking to an empty chair, it seemed like something only crazy people did. But within minutes, something shifted. The words I'd been choking back for weeks came pouring out. Things I didn't even realize I was carrying. And when I was done, really done, when there was nothing left to say, I made a rule that conversation was over. No replaying it, no bringing it back up. The chair was empty again. Here's why this works. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a real confrontation and one you've imagined. Those looping thoughts, they trigger the same stress response as actual danger. Your heart races, your muscles tense. Cortisol floods your system. But when you give those thoughts a physical outlet, when you speak them aloud with intention, you complete the stress cycle. You signal to your nervous system, this matter is resolved. After doing this every night for a week, I noticed something extraordinary. The mental noise quieted. Situations that used to haunt me for days now passed through in minutes. I wasn't suppressing emotions. I was processing them fully, then releasing them. In the space that opened up, that's where creativity lives. That's where real problem solving happens. This isn't about venting endlessly. There's a discipline to it. You don't get to revisit the chair tomorrow for the same issue. One conversation, one release. Then you move forward. What you'll discover is that 90% of what torments you doesn't survive being spoken aloud. The monsters in your head shrink when you drag them into the light. Try it tonight, not as an experiment, not half-heartedly, but with the willingness to finally say what you've been too afraid or too polite to admit. You'll sleep deeper, you'll wake up lighter, and you'll realize how much energy you've been wasting on battles that only existed because you kept fighting them. The empty chair doesn't solve your problems. It solves the problem of you being stuck in them. And that changes everything. Habit 4, the 5-minute favor. You want to know the real secret behind why some people seem to have all the luck? It's not about being at the right place at the right time. It's not about who you know. It's about what you give freely, without keeping score, without expecting anything in return. Most people get this backward. They think success comes from taking, from hustling, from squeezing every opportunity dry. But the truth, the world opens doors for those who open doors for others first. I used to believe in the myth of the self-made success story. I thought if I just worked harder than everyone else, if I networked strategically, if I played the game right, I'd get ahead. Then I noticed something about the truly successful people I admired. They all had this strange habit of giving first, not grand gesture, not calculated favors designed to get something in return, just small, genuine acts of help that took them 5 minutes or less. So I decided to try it. Just one small favor a day. No expectations, no strings attached. The rules were simple. It had to take 5 minutes or less. It had to be genuinely helpful, and I couldn't do it with any thought of getting something back. The first day, I held the elevator for someone carrying heavy packages. The next, I sent a friend an article I knew would help with their project. Then I left an honest compliment for a barista who made great coffee. Small things, insignificant, really, or so I thought. Here's what happened that surprised me. After about a week, I started noticing opportunities everywhere, not because they suddenly appeared, but because my brain had been trained to look for ways to help. That mental shift changed everything. Where I used to see strangers, I now saw potential to make someone's day slightly better. Where I used to focus only on my own goals, I started seeing how helping others with theirs could create unexpected connections. But here's the critical part. The moment you start keeping score, you lose the magic. This isn't about tit for tat. It's not I'll scratch your back so you'll scratch mine. That's just disguised selfishness. The real power comes when you give without any thought of return. Why? Because people can smell a transactional relationship from a mile away. But genuine generosity, that sticks, that gets remembered. After about 3 weeks of this practice, something remarkable started happening. People began going out of their way to help me. Not because I asked, not because they owed me, but because human nature responds to authenticity. That contact I sent a useful article to. They introduced me to someone who became a major client. The barista started giving me free upgrades. The universe has a funny way of returning what you put out into it, but only if you're not keeping track. The most surprising benefit wasn't external though. It was how this practice changed me. I became more observant, more connected to the people around me, more aware of how small actions create ripples. I stopped seeing strangers as background characters in my story and started recognizing we're all main characters in our own lives. That shift in perspective is worth more than any favor returned. Now, this isn't about being a doormat. It's not about saying yes to everything. The 5-minute rule keeps it manageable. You're not sacrificing your time or energy. You're just redirecting a tiny fraction of it outward. And in that redirection, you'll find doors opening you never knew existed. Try it for 2 weeks. Just one small favor a day. Don't tell anyone you're doing it. Don't track who owes you. Just give for the sake of giving. Watch how your luck changes. Watch how opportunities find you. Watch how your entire perspective on success shifts. Because here's the truth they don't teach you. The fastest way to get what you want is to help others get what they want first. Not as a strategy, not as a manipulation, but as a way of being in the world that makes everyone's life, including yours, just a little bit better. That's how you build real influence. That's how you create genuine connection. And that's how luck becomes something you don't wait for, but something you create, one 5-minute favor at a time. That awkward conversation where you stumbled over your words, gold. That opportunity you missed because you hesitated, a masterclass. That project that didn't work out, your personal roadmap to what actually will. We've been brainwashed to see failure as the enemy, as something to avoid at all costs. But what if I told you that the people who achieve extraordinary things aren't those who fail less? They're simply those who fail better. I discovered this the hard way. For years I did what everyone does. I hid my mistakes, brushed them under the rug, pretended they never happened. And you know what that got me? The same mistakes, over and over, until I started keeping what I call a failure log. Just 5 minutes each night. 2 simple steps. First, write down one failure from the day. Not some dramatic catastrophe, just something that didn't go right. Second, find one lesson in it. That's it. No self-flagellation, no dwelling, just observation. The first night was uncomfortable. Admitting failure, even to myself, felt like weakness. That sales call I bombed, I wanted to forget it ever happened. But when I forced myself to write it down, something shifted. The moment I saw it on paper, failed to clearly explain the product benefits. It stopped being this vague cloud of shame and became just information. And with that clarity came the lesson. Prepare 3 key points before calls. Simple, obvious even, but only because I'd stopped running from the experience. By the third night, something remarkable happened. I actually looked forward to this exercise. Where I used to dread thinking about what went wrong, I now saw each failure as a puzzle to solve. That awkward networking event where I stood alone, failure. Didn't approach anyone new. Lesson. First 5 minutes are crucial. Enter with a plan to greet 3 people. The workout I skipped, failure. Let fatigue be an excuse. Lesson. Schedule workouts when energy is highest. Each entry wasn't a judgment, it was data. Valuable data. Here's the psychological magic no one talks about. When you normalize failure, you disarm it. Most of us walk around terrified of messing up, so we play it safe, stay small, avoid risks. But when you make failure a daily practice, when you actually seek it out in your reflections, it loses its power over you. After 2 weeks of this, I noticed my confidence growing in strange ways. Not because I was succeeding more, I wasn't, but because I'd stopped being afraid to try things that might not work. The biggest shift came in how I defined failure itself. I began seeing that what we typically call failure is usually just feedback. That client who said no, not rejection, market research. That presentation that fell flat, not humiliation. A spotlight on where to improve. The failure log trained me to extract the value from every misstep instead of wasting energy pretending they didn't happen. Now here's the counterintuitive truth. The more comfortable you become with small failures, the less likely you are to experience catastrophic ones. Because when you're paying attention daily, you course correct constantly. Most big failures aren't sudden disasters. They're the accumulation of small mistakes we were too proud or too scared to examine. Try this for 7 days. Each night, open a notebook and answer 2 questions. What's one thing that didn't go well today? And what's one thing it taught me? Don't overthink it. The failures can be tiny: a poorly handled email, a wasted hour, a harsh word spoken. The lessons can be simple. Need to check emails before sending. Social media kills productivity. Count to 3 before responding when angry. What you'll discover isn't that you're failing more than you thought, though you might be. You'll discover that every failure contains a gift, if you're willing to unwrap it. After 30 days of this practice, you won't see setbacks the same way again. You'll start recognizing patterns in your mistakes that reveal your blind spots. You'll develop an almost supernatural ability to pivot quickly when things go wrong. Most importantly, you'll stop wasting energy pretending to be perfect and start channeling that energy into actually getting better. Because here's the secret the most successful people know but rarely admit. Their advantage isn't that they fail less, it's that they pay closer attention to each failure, extract its lessons faster, and implement those lessons more consistently. Your failures aren't the opposite of success, they're the raw materials. Start collecting them, start studying them, and watch how quickly you outgrow the people still pretending they never make mistakes. The failure log doesn't just change how you view setbacks, it changes how you approach risk, how you handle challenges, and ultimately how quickly you progress. Because when you're not afraid to fail, there's literally nothing you can't eventually master. And that's how ordinary people achieve extraordinary things. Chances are, it happened in a split second. A knee-jerk reaction, a defensive reply, an emotional outburst that escaped before your brain could catch it. Now imagine if you had just 10 extra seconds, not to craft the perfect response, not to strategize, just to breathe, just to exist in the space between stimulus and response. That tiny gap changes everything. I discovered this by accident during a particularly tense meeting. Someone asked me a loaded question, the kind designed to put me on the spot. My usual move would have been to jump in immediately, to prove I had the answer, to show I wasn't caught off guard. But that day, for reasons I still don't understand, I paused. Just 10 seconds. I watched as the room grew uncomfortable with the silence. I watched as the person who asked the question started shifting in their seat. And then when I finally spoke, something magical happened. People leaned in. They listened. Not because what I said was brilliant, but because the silence had given it weight. That's when I made it a practice. Before answering any question, whether from my boss, my spouse, or a stranger, I'd count to 10 in my head, not to think, not to prepare, just to create space. At first it felt unnatural. We live in a world that rewards quick responses, fast comebacks, instant reaction. Silence is treated like awkward dead air that needs to be filled. But the more I practiced this pause, the more I realized, silence isn't empty. It's powerful. It's the canvas on which meaningful words are painted. Here's what 10 seconds of silence does that most people never consider. First, it disarms the other person. In conversation, we're conditioned to expect immediate responses. When you break that rhythm, you take control of the interaction without saying a word. Second, it gives your subconscious mind time to surface the right response instead of the clever one. Ever notice how your best comebacks come to you hours after the argument? That's because your deeper intelligence needs time to work. The 10-second rule gives it that time in the moment. But the real magic happened in how people began responding to me differently. Colleagues started assuming I was more thoughtful simply because I spoke less frequently. In negotiations, counterparts would often fill the silence by improving their offer. Even in personal relationships, that tiny pause prevented countless arguments, because it stopped me from reacting to emotion with more emotion. The most surprising benefit, I started hearing what people weren't saying. In those 10 seconds of silence, you notice micro-expressions, body language, the subtle cues most miss when they're just waiting for their turn to talk. You realize how often people ask one question while meaning another. You begin to understand conversations on a completely different level. There's a reason the most powerful people in any room are often the quietest. It's not because they have nothing to say. It's because they understand that words gain value through scarcity. When you speak less, each word carries more weight. When you react slower, people assume your responses are more considered, even if you're using the exact same words you would have blurted out immediately before. This practice will feel uncomfortable at first. You'll worry people think you're slow or unprepared. The opposite is true. That 10 seconds feels much longer in your head than it does to observers. And in those rare cases when someone comments on the pause, simply say, "I was thinking about what you said." That alone will set you apart in a world where most people don't truly listen to anything but the sound of their own voice. Try it today. Next time someone asks you a question, any question, count to 10 in your head before responding. Don't use the time to formulate your answer. Just breathe. Just be present. Notice how the dynamic shifts. Notice how your answers improve without effort. Notice how people start treating your words with more respect. Because here's the truth no one tells you. In a world that never stops talking, the person who masters silence masters every conversation. Not by being the loudest, not by being the quickest, but by being the only one who understands that real power isn't in having the last word, it's in being comfortable with the space between words. That 10-second silence, it's not empty air, it's the most valuable real estate in any interaction. And once you learn to inhabit it comfortably, you'll never again feel like conversations are happening to you. You'll know you're guiding them one purposeful pause at a time. The people who change minds, who win negotiations, who build deep connections, they aren't the ones with the gift of gab. They're the ones with the courage to be quiet. Your 10-second silence isn't hesitation. It's the ultimate power move in a world that's forgotten how to listen. Master this, and you master something far more valuable than eloquence. You master the art of being truly heard. Maybe it's a room full of people more successful than you, or a situation where you don't feel quite ready. Your shoulders slump slightly, your voice gets quieter. You become a little less you. Now imagine if you could flip that switch the other way. What if you could walk into any room already carrying yourself like the person you know you're capable of becoming? Here's the secret. You can, and it doesn't require faking anything. I tested this in the simplest way possible. For 7 days, I decided to act as if I was already the confident, capable, successful version of myself I wanted to be. Not by pretending to be someone else, but by giving my future self permission to show up today. The rules were simple. Dress like that person would dress. Speak like they would speak. Make decisions like they would make them. Not as an act, not as wishful thinking, but as practice for what was already coming. The first morning felt ridiculous. Standing in front of my closet, I asked, what would the best version of me wear today? Not the most expensive clothes, the right clothes. The ones that would make me stand a little taller. That day, I spoke up in a meeting I normally would have stayed quiet in. Not because I had more to say, but because the version of me I was becoming wouldn't have hesitated. Here's what shocked me. No one called me out. No one said, "Who do you think you are?" In fact, people responded differently immediately. Waiters were more attentive. Colleagues listened more closely. Strangers made more eye contact. Here's why this works. Your brain is an incredible pattern matching machine. It doesn't know the difference between acting confident and being confident. When you carry yourself a certain way, your brain receives thousands of tiny signals, your posture, your tone, your pace, and says, "Oh, this must be who we are now." And then it starts aligning your thoughts, your abilities, even your opportunities to match that identity. But the real magic happened around day 3. I noticed I wasn't acting anymore. The sharper decisions came naturally. The clearer speech felt authentic. The confidence wasn't a performance. It was just me showing up more fully. That's when opportunities started appearing. A client asked if I took on more advanced work. I didn't yet, but said yes. A colleague recommended me for a project above my pay grade. The world wasn't responding to some fake version of me, it was responding to the real me who had stopped holding back. This isn't about pretending to be rich when you're broke, or experienced when you're not. It's about bridging the gap between where you are and where you're going, by living from that place now in the ways you can. Your future self isn't some distant fantasy. They're just you with more practice. So why wait to practice? The as if rule works because it's not about deception. It's about alignment. Every time you make a decision your future self would make, you're not pretending, you're practicing. And with each repetition, you're not getting better at acting, you're becoming. Try this. For the next week, wake up each morning and ask one question. How would the best version of me handle today? Then do that. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, just as close as you can. Dress like they would dress. Speak like they would speak. Show up like they would show up. Don't tell anyone you're doing it. Just watch what happens. You'll notice 3 shifts almost immediately. First, how you see yourself changes. Second, how others see you changes. But most importantly, the opportunities that come your way will change. Not because the world is different, but because you are. The version of you that's coming was always there. The as-if rule just lets them out to play a little sooner. People will tell you to fake it till you make it. That's wrong. You're not faking anything. You're practicing, you're rehearsing, you're giving your future self room to breathe today. And when you do that consistently, one day you'll realize you stopped acting as if, and started simply being. That's the ultimate power of this habit. It doesn't just change how you're perceived, it changes who you become. And in that becoming lies every success you've ever imagined for yourself. The person you want to be isn't in some distant future, they're waiting in the wings of your present. All you have to do is give them the stage. So take it, today, not tomorrow, not when you're ready, because ready isn't a condition you meet, it's a choice you make. And that choice starts the moment you decide to act as if you already are. You'll realize success isn't about big leaps. It's about removing the tiny barriers you didn't even see.